as if we know what we're doing. Right, okay. Yes, hello again.
Hi.
I have a different style of video today. I am joined here by the lovely Dino Muhic, who is an incredible 3D artist. He does some of the most insane work using Octane and is probably one of the most prolific creators that I've seen in a long time. And I'm super excited, if you cannot tell already, to speak to you and to learn from you. So thank you so much. Hello.
Hello, thank you too. I'm very excited too. Thanks for the good introduction.
I'm the first guest, and hopefully the first of many. But I think it's quite nice because I am, for context, at the very beginning. I've been using Octane and learning 3D for about 2 years. You are a seasoned professional and working with VFX and working with all of these things, and to get a perspective of what it's like to become and to learn to be someone like you, and to hear from you as well, exactly what that would be, is a huge, huge honor. So thank you so much for letting me do this. So the first thing I want to do is to actually ask you to tell us a little bit about you, the history of you getting into motion graphics, and what it's like to be a 3D motion graphics designer.
Okay, I'm Dino Muhic, and I'm doing motion graphics and visual effects as a freelancer since 2009. I graduated in Germany doing motion media production, which is, back then in Germany when I started in 2005, 2006, no one knew what 3D and motion graphics is. And there was never a course or something where you could just say, okay, I'm going to do motion graphics or something. When I was studying for 4 years. We were doing we were allowed to do a lot of personal stuff and to just experiment. And so it wasn't really a guided thing. It was like, okay, just look what you like and try to make cool stuff with it. Or we had a moment for like 6 months where we could choose to go to a studio or some production, whatever, and do a trainee, be a trainee there. And I had the luck that I was close to Frankfurt. I'm living in the central of Germany and close to a big city called Frankfurt, Germany, and where actually Pixelmondo started. Pixelmondo is a big VFX company.
Oh.
Yeah, and I had luck getting in there and doing my trainee there. Or it was more like an internship for like 3 to 4 months. And I really liked it there. So when I did my movie, when I stopped studying 2009, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a freelancer. And
from that point, so as soon as you finished graduating, you thought, let's just be a freelancer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they had demand. They needed people like us who like to do motion graphics, especially in Pixelmondo. They was doing a lot of motion graphics back then. Now they're only doing visual effects. But back then they did a lot of motion graphics. And I started doing that. And I was freelancer since then.
That's amazing.
13 years.
I think the natural thought is, I need to go work for a studio, or I need to go work for an agency of some kind. That's kind of how I got into this, and especially the video and the filmmaking side of things that was my natural way in. I never would have thought once that I have the confidence to go freelance straight away. So the fact that you did that, but I guess that was a product of the company being there and you being in the right place.
Yeah, I
I
was really lucky. I had a lot of colleagues who went there, and so I kind of felt like a bit like family over there because I knew a lot of people from my course, from the university where I was, and it was kind of the first place everyone got when they finished studying. They started somewhere in Frankfurt at one of those studios, and I knew a lot of people at Pixelmondo. During working actually, that I got more and more into 3D. I think 2010 or 11, this was the first time I kind of opened cinema. I did a bit of Maya during my studying.
Okay.
So I was already experimenting with 3D, and we had a course that went only for like 1 year where we were able to work with Maya. And I never really liked Maya because I thought the UI is gross. Really not intuitive. But I managed to do a little movie of us. I modeled the train I was using every day to go to the university. I tried to model that in Maya and make a little camera animation through it. I think that
amazing.
one is not visible or anymore on the internet. I think that one is dead.
Is that not ready for the
No, I think I removed that from everywhere. If it's anywhere, don't look at it. But this was kind of the very first thing I ever did in 3D.
Well, I mean, that's something to be proud of, or like maybe looking back at it now, you might be
Yeah.
thinking, wow, okay, that's at least
I'm
it's a
thinking like,
start.
why did I try to model something? Because I hate modeling it. Like, I mean, why did I choose to just model something? But I modeled the train and in a really bad way, and animated the camera through it and did some really bad VFX on top of it. So it was sort of going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Then I discovered Cinema 4D. I was like, damn, that's the best UI ever, because it was so much more intuitive and easy to use. And started doing cinema, I think, in the studios then from 2011 on, around that time, I think it was, that I started
Okay.
using, and it was usually in conjunction with After Effects. We were doing a lot of motion graphics for big LED shows. I was really specialized in big resolutions, wide things on live events, especially car shows, stuff like that. We did a lot because in Germany, in the place where I was, near Frankfurt, there were a lot of car companies, and so there were also a lot of agencies which worked for car companies. So there was not
Right.
there's like 90% of all agencies in Frankfurt in the city have some car manufacturers as clients. So a lot of stuff was being done for car manufacturers.
And it makes
Uh,
a lot of sense when you look at your portfolio now because,
yeah,
you have a lot of car stuff. And I do
yeah,
have a
it's a lot
question
of
on
car
that.
stuff. Yeah,
But
yeah.
some of the best car stuff I've ever seen. So
Thanks a lot.
it's,
And we were doing a lot
it's
of car
amazing.
shows. So it's live events it's called Frankfurt Automotive Show, Beijing. There was Tokyo, Moscow, everywhere. There's like every year there's a car show. Nowadays, being done less and less because no one wants to go to fairs anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but back then it was a big business, and like I said, there was a lot of agencies in around my city where we're doing exactly that. So I was doing a lot of motion graphics combined with 3D, and by that I was moving more and more and more into 3D. Now I would say like 90% 3D artist and 10% motion graphics. Yeah, and I think around 2015, 14, Octane came up, and I was like, damn, that's really fast. And what I really liked about it was how how I could use it in a really photographic kind of way, as styling and lighting everything as a photographer would. Because I always had photography as a hobby. I was shooting photos since I think 2008. I got my first DSLR, so I
Hmm.
was always into that. And Octane was the first time that I used the 3D software, which really felt like, okay, I'm really using something that feels like I'm doing it on set. The transition to Octane, I think it went really fast because compared to being used to physical, it was I was being able to iterate much faster. Just moving lights
Hmm.
in near real time and seeing it in your viewport was so amazing for me that I really just took my time and went in and looked through all the tools there are. This is usually my approach with software. Is I at first I look at some tutorials just to see how the basic UI works, and then I go in and really look at each of the tools that are in the tool set and see what they do, and to try to memorize what each of them does so I can grab it when I need it. And this was also the thing with Octane back then, that I really wanted to know how does it work. And
Yeah.
there were a really good set of tutorials by InLife Thrill back then,
Hmm.
that who did like the first really good batch of tutorials for Octane, which were really well designed, and explained Octane, the first version, and the second. I think he did it until version 2.0, and it was really well done and really easy to get in for me watching those tutorials. And yeah, so I think the transition for me was kind of okay. I was using physical now then back then for like 3 years, I think, or 2 years. I'm not sure. I think physical came in R13, which
Hmm.
was probably, or yeah, something around R13 to R15. Not sure anymore. Or probably it was R15 back then. So we only had standard renderer in the first years. Physical was the first time you could actually do shaders and do lighting that felt realistic. Then
Okay.
Octane came in and was like much better, even better than that. So it was it was a natural progression to go there because I really wanted to feel um, being able to work like a photographer.
And this brings me perfectly onto one of my next questions, which is the the skills that you don't realize that you need to become a 3D artist.
Math.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I was okay in math in school. Then later on, I didn't really think that I would use it. But when I started to use cinema and espresso and stuff like that, you really need subjects really need a bit of math, especially if you want to build rigs in espresso using vectors and stuff like that. So that that will help you a lot.
Hmm.
But it really depends on which kind of 3D artist you want to be, in which kind of department you want to go. If you want to be a generalist, or if you really want to do character design, if you want to do Houdini stuff where you have to code a lot. I mean, I'm not a Houdini guy. I don't think I don't have a mind for Houdini because it's so technical that even for me it's like, okay, I'm more too much of an artist to spend too much time learning Houdini. I probably will one day, but everyone says that, but I don't know if I will ever find time to do it. So it really depends on which way you want to go, and I quickly realized which parts of 3D I like and which I don't. Like I said, I'm not really a fan of modeling. I'm not really a fan of UV layouting, even if I had really to learn it at some point. And if some people come over and want to hire me for something with characters, I'm like, there are better people for this. So I don't touching
Yeah.
character animation because no, there are specialized people for that, or modeling humans or any characters and something like that. So it really depends. And I was going since it kind of brought me back to Octane, and the way it worked kind of brought me back to 2002, where I was using Photoshop and photos and layering textures on top of it. And what I was doing back then was actually making shaders without knowing it. And with Octane, I kind of got back to that point where I was being able to use textures and build my own shaders, which kind of looked like the stuff I did back then. So it kind of felt natural to go in that way of shading and lighting,
Yeah.
because as a photographer, I like light and I like what you can do with light, how you can model objects with light. Um, and back then in the Photoshop times, I like texturing stuff. I like grunginess. I like dirt. I like texture, and so it was kind of logical for me to go in that regard, in that way, to be shading and lighting specialized in that regard. So I was moving more and more away from motion graphics and doing lighting and shading in the later years, because like I said, I went back to my 16-year-old who liked to slap textures on top of each other and with overlay blend modes, and that's really still something that I just love doing.
Yeah, because it's funny that, just going into and learning, because I transitioned from, say, using After Effects and Premiere Pro, all of these things, just doing pure filmmaking, and then coming into 3D. And the first thing you do is, you open Cinema 4D and then you make a donut. And I'm like, okay, this is it. This is what I need to. This is me learning 3D. This is me learning how to model. But I didn't get any joy. I
Yeah.
had no joy in that.
Mhm.
I didn't have a thing. I think the thing that really flipped it for me was a very specific, similar point to you, which is actually being able to take a photograph or
Mhm.
actually build a scene and compose a scene. And
Yeah.
you're doing composition, you're doing lighting,
Mhm.
you're getting to do the things that I'm genuinely interested in, as
Mhm.
opposed to all of those things. But it's nice to know that you don't have to know everything.
So for me, it was like you said, it was making nice pictures at the end, and having a nice output and liking what you see. And so at the end, for some, the result doesn't matter because they like to code a tool which you can use later on, like a rigger. A rigger is someone who creates a rig for the character animator to actually animate the character, which then gets rendered and which then gets put in the movie. But the rigger is done with it when the rig is done, and is fine with having the rig be nice and for the character animator to use it, and he's like, okay, my job is done and I really like it. And I'm like, okay, I need the end output to be really nice so I can show it to someone or can look at it.
Yeah.
And I need something. I need a result. Like I say, I need a result that I can be happy with and that I can show to people. Because it's like painting a picture and putting it on a wall and just be like, okay, yeah, I did this. So
exactly.
you need
There's
that
something tangible
satisfaction.
to that.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is phenomenal. And I think a question that I wanted to ask you is, if you hadn't have gone down this path of going down motion graphics and doing these things, it already sounds like you would have already ended up doing something creative anyway, whether it's making textures or doing something. But is there any other paths that you thought you could have gone down, or has 3D seemed to have encompassed a lot of the things that you're interested in?
Just trying to get into the movie business and creating or bringing those ideas that I had and written down as small exposés or something would be something I would have done probably, or try to do.
And I guess you can take that sort of thread of a story, storytelling, at least, into your images or into the things that you're making now. Where something that I realize, like by using the dirt shader, you're telling how weathered is this object. How long has it been out in the rain? How long has it been doing these things? There's ways in which to connect these, and sometimes I lose that track. Sometimes I lose the this node is supposed to try and tell someone this about this object or about this image, and I lose that quite often, because I'm just trying to think about all the different ways you can make something.
Well, if it's fun for you to just create and to experiment, that's totally fine. I think there's beauty in that if you just let your mind flow and just create just for the sake of exploring, that's totally fine with me, because at the end you will have something that you probably will be proud of anyway, and liking it. So I think the way of exploring is the best way to learn. I can never say that I'm ever bored in my life, because I don't know if I was ever bored, because I will always find a way to do something that triggers my mind and just makes it go full throttle, and part of that is always constantly learning and being exposed to new stuff, and just try, okay, what does this do and how does this work, and just expanding your capabilities. And part of that really, if you have fun while you learn and never stop learn, I think this is really a crucial thing, crucial skill that will keep you motivated throughout your whole life.
It's amazing really how especially your process to learning software is essentially play. It's essentially, let's just throw this in, let's see what this works.
That's the best kind of way. Sometimes you have to learn something because you have a problem, you have to fix it, and you find out the only way you can fix it is by using this and this software, this and this way, and then you have to learn it. But the best way is really just to play and have fun with it.
It's like, learning the software and then maintaining your creativity, because I think this is something that I've struggled with quite a lot. Is I'm learning this software and I'm learning tutorials and I'm looking on YouTube and I'm doing these things, but I'm just replicating a way of doing something. And how have you managed to, push yourself outside of that zone, or make that's what I'm trying to get to at the moment, is push yourself outside of that creative zone to move your way past the tutorial into your own look or your own feel or your own aesthetic?
That's a good question. I think, and I answered this question for myself too a few times. That what I find out about myself is that I never watch tutorials that have a result, a visual result at the end that looks nice. That the only tutorials I look are problem-solving tutorials. So tutorials where I really need to understand how something works, not how to get to a specific result, like a specific image or a landscape or a look or a style, but just technical tutorials where I really have to solve a problem and see how does that problem is solved. And I really like the point in YouTube. If you watch something, there's this little bar which has like a little graph going up and down, which shows like the interest point. And I usually just skip to that because I know probably the answer that I need, that I want to have answered to my question is probably there. And I just look at that part. I love what Merck was doing, those 1 minute tutorials or something where you really have just a problem and you want to solve it, and just show me that. I don't need a 40-minute tutorial how to create a specific logo or a specific style. I don't need it because I know what I want to do anyway. It's in my mind. I have my own ideas. So I'm really not interested in those kind of tutorials. I'm really just interested in problem-solving tutorials. And if I would ever do tutorials myself, it would probably just be as quick as possible. If I
30 seconds.
If I could do it in 10 seconds, I would do it probably in 10 seconds. It's probably the worst thing you can do for YouTube. You would not get any traction at all, or money or whatever. But it would probably be just a 10-second, like, here, that's the button, do you need?
I'm looking forward to Dino's 10-second tutorials. You know, it's got a good ring to it. I think you could use YouTube Shorts. You know, there's
probably
the Shorts feature.
But it's like, is short like easy? Can you easily search for those? Like, can you search for shorts?
Not as easily, and they're also not the format.
Yeah.
It's not a good format for showing a landscape. You know, a landscape computer screen on such a small real estate. It doesn't really work. You know, you basically got your little cutout of this entire image, and you just happen to zoom. I tried it once, but it didn't work out very well.
I saw some TikTokers are doing cinema and After Effects tutorials and really quickly compressed into a small amount of time, like in 30-second and 1 minute thing. And it was really interesting for me how the young people approach this idea of teaching people something without because the young people have no patience. They could never live through a 45-minute tutorial. I think I did one tutorial once on YouTube for After Effects, particular how to create water in particular. It was, I think, like 40 minutes long. I think people now in the Gen Z or whatever, they wouldn't not be able to go through that tutorial because it's just too long for them. And I really like the way they do it on TikTok, and they're just compressing it really fast, like this, and this, and this, and then it's done. And this is really, and I try to get the most out of those, just sucking in the information that I need, hoping that there's something valuable for me in there. But like I said, I'm not usually looking at tutorials like let's create a nice landscape, or let's create a nice design with a nice lighting, because I already have my idea. I know what I want to do, and if I come across a problem in that path, I'm looking for tutorials which can solve this problem. But I'm not looking at any design tutorials.
And that leads me very nicely to me wanting to understand, just as an overview, because you know my workflow is not a workflow really. It's just I'm going to play in Cinema 4D and
totally
then
fine.
Render something out in Octane and enjoy the process.
Yeah, enjoy.
And the longest thing I've done was like, it was really fun. And I think the longest video I did was like a 30-second sort of Audi commercial. That was the first thing that I had rendered with Octane, and I felt really good, and it doesn't look that good, and the textures are terrible, and all of these things, but I really enjoyed it. But I'd love to hear about, so say a new client came to you, just from like a software perspective, or even just a process perspective, how do you break down a project, just so anyone that is learning can understand where did the software fit in to that journey of you going from idea or client to final finished product?
Well, it depends on what the client delivers first. I mean, some clients are just having text-based assignments, so they give you a brief, like a one-sentence brief. I need this and this, and then what you would usually start is first getting to know the client. What does he like? What's the way they work? What do they show on their side? What do they like to show? So that means, okay, if I go into that direction, it's probably already in the right direction. If I start to do something completely different, they might probably be opposed to it at the beginning, and I will need much more time to convince them.
Are you using references for that? Are you using, are you showing storyboards? Mood boards?
Yeah, mood boards. I usually just go and if I have something, sometimes you're lucky, you're reading something, you already have ideas in your mind popping up, and like, okay, I will probably do it like this. I don't know if this is something that just is something you learn through the experience over time, or if it's something that you just have in you, that you read something and ideas pop into your mind. I really can't answer that. usually I have ideas in my mind, and then I look for moods that go in that direction. Now we have this big topic of AI, which can give you much better mood boards in a much shorter time, which go in
Have
much
you
better.
used them?
Yes, just to get mood boards to which fit much better to what I want to sell to the client or what I want to.
Amazing.
So it really helps in that regard that sometimes you find the right mood, but it's not really fitting. Like you're like 50% there or like 60% there, but you actually want a bit different. And then you can just push it into the AI and say, okay, I want actually this, but I need a car instead of a vase or instead of a bicycle or something. If there's a bicycle in there, but it's the style you want to go, just replace me the bicycle with the car. And because it will be much easier for the client to understand what I'm going to sell them, if the moods are already going in the right direction. So it's moods. Then when you have moods and you decide on the style, you go. It depends. Is it animation? It's probably if they go to me, it's probably animation. So let's say it's an animation. So we would go and see. Okay, how long should it be? How big is it? You have to have all the details about okay, what you want to have. Is it for an LED? Is it a weird aspect ratio? I did some stuff which is like 50:1, so it's a small stripe like this and goes at like 48,000 pixels in width. So it's really the assignments can be all different kind. This was a 360-degree animation for a stadium, so you have a really small stripe, but it's like 80,000 pixels width and just 1,000 pixel high. And working that is really not nice and fun. But
how do you even go about rendering something?
Dude, back then, with farms, there's no other way. You have to use farms. And we had back then when we worked in studios doing that kind of projects, we had big farms crunching out those After Effects. We really brought After Effects to its knees every time we did that.
Wow.
We maxed out at the 32,000 pixel width in After Effects most of the times. Yeah, it's really slow.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, it's really slow. You can't work without. And it was back. I mean, we did that already in 2008. Can't imagine the hardware we had in 2008. I couldn't even recall it anymore. And we already maxed those 32,000 pixels out, and it was like 6 minutes per frame in After Effects. So, and it was animations, so it was 40,000 frames, something like that. So it went long, long nights. But
I was going to say very long nights.
So it depends what the client wants, and you have to really be sure that what you're gonna bring to the table fits to the agenda, fits to the brief. Not everything works the same way. You can have this design work in this aspect ratio because it totally looks different. So you really have to be a bit, have to have a bit of experience if it's some weird aspect ratio stuff. Then we come to the phase where we do animatics. So really cheap animatics, just moving shapes around, blocking, showing how stuff could work. Already seeing how does animation work. Are my animations too fast, too slow for this shot? How many edits do I need? Do I need to cut somewhere, or is it like just one big take and just animations coming in and out?
So are you just doing this as like a play blast from the, the picture?
It can be, it can be from picture in 3D, but it can also be in After Effects or in Premiere. It depends. Just what's the best assignment? What's the best tool? We really don't say, okay, we have to do it in 3D. If it's something that has the motion graphics, we can also go out and do it in After Effects. In general in Animatic. Then if the Animatic is going the right direction, we get a bit more detail in there. Then if it's obviously if it's a 3D scene that has to be done, we are doing it in cinema all the time. But still, even if it has shots, if it has some edits in there, you would usually just render out different shots and then do the final animatic editing in Premiere, for example, because it's not easier to just if the director says or if someone of us says, okay, well, let's make the shot at 10 seconds longer or 1 or 10 frames longer. It's just easier to do it in a tool like Premiere than to trying to do it in cinema all in one scene using a camera scene or something object.
Yeah.
That's probably not a good approach.
And I liked when, learning that sort of technique of using an animatic, which is something that I've done previously, for knowing exactly how many frames that shot needs to be, for then calculating how long the overall length, when you then take that into cinema, this needs to be exactly this long. And that to me was, I didn't have that concept before. I was just rendering out things as long as I could and then cutting between them afterwards.
Yeah, this is probably better than we anyway. This is what
really?
This is what we do. We usually work with handles, or I would always work with handles. So I would create shots. I would set up the camera for the shot, and I would usually make it much longer than it needs to be, and do the actual editing, or just export the whole animation. It's totally common in VFX to deliver with handles, which can be 12 frames. Some supervisors say it has to be 22 frames on both sides. Some say it just has to be 12 frames on both sides. So you're always rendering out with handles. You're always working with handles anyway. And when we do setups for cinematics or stuff, it's usually 3 to 5 seconds longer than it needs to be. And the final edit will be definitely done in something like Premiere or After Effects, sometimes even too, just to nail the timing down really, because music comes into play after a certain time, and so it has to fit to the music, and doing those cuts and those edits to really fit to the timing, to the music, to the beat, is something that you would do in Premiere. So it's totally common to have shots with handles. And I would even do something like 3 to 5 seconds, just to be sure that after later on you can even speed it up. So you have a lot of flash on the side, which you can say, okay, well, the shot's nice, but it's too slow. Let's speed it up, and you still have enough frames in there to speed it up a few percent without having to go back into cinema and render it again and set up a new timeline and everything. So it's the shots are always longer than they need to be.
Amazing. So once you've then done your animatic and you've got say sign off on your animatic, once you've gone through that process, is that when have you already done like look development at this point potentially?
Usually in parallel.
In parallel, okay.
In parallel there's look development being done, so you're already trying to set up shots, see okay what kind of mood does it fit, what kind of colors we're going to using, that stuff that's happening in the parallel to the animatic. So usually when the animatic is done and signed off, you already have 80-90% of the look already done, and then you're getting over and bringing that look over to the animatic and trying to fuse it all together.
So is this like are you like then you're just updating the animatic to look better essentially? So once you've kind of done your basic blocking, do you ever then just update the animatic then with these sort of colorways? All of these things.
Colors, objects, detailed objects, with the modeling, with the right thing that needs to be put into the scene. So you usually would probably have, if I'm doing it with a team, usually we would do the animatic, and while we're doing animatic, we were setting up each shot and really working already on look development on each of them, so we can all bring it together at one point.
Amazing. And so say you've got the green light, say your client's very happy, what next?
Next is actually getting all the shots to a point where they look nice in animation. Just sometimes you realize, okay, some stuff is working as a still, but then in the camera animation, you have something entering the screen or leaving the screen which doesn't look nice, or the camera is moving too far and you didn't think about the camera moving this direction, and over there's a shadow or something which in your look development you didn't think of. So you have to come up, okay, how do we have to change the lighting, stuff like this. But then once you have the look development done, you're fine with the colors and everything, fine with the light direction. You bring it over to the animatic, and then you're progressing on the shots. What I would usually do is I like to work in a cake layer type of way. So imagine a cake, and it has different layers, So you start with the ground and you add on top the more time you have. You add on top. So you're not trying to finish one scene or one shot and say, okay, this shot is final. So you're getting all the shots to a better state throughout the whole timeline. So you're adding more layers to the cake and having all the shots be somewhere reasonable and not trying to concentrate on just one shot and say, okay, we are going shot based. We're producing this shot and we're finishing it off. Then we're doing the next one. This is something that I would not do, because through the progression, you might find out that while this one shot is now finished and looks nice, the next one with the same approach will not look as good, or you need to change the approach, or you need to change the texture, or you need to change something about it, which then makes the first shot look look worse. So you need to go back to that. Or the client says, okay, well, I like what you did in the later shots. Let's apply this to the first shots. So you will, if whatever you finish a week, 2 days, or like a month before deadline, you will need to redo it anyway. So this is not a good approach, because you will need to go back to those shots which you thought you were there final. And
That's smart.
We don't use the word final ever. It's a totally forbidden word, because there is no final ever. And if someone writes final somewhere, you would probably kick him out, because there is no final. And like I said, it's much better to work and to bring all the shots to a good state as soon as possible, and then tweak all of them throughout the timeline, tweak them all, get to a better place, get them all better and better, to raise the quality overall throughout the whole project. The more time you have, if you decide, okay, we have 3 more days, let's touch up the shots and bring everything to a better quality. So add another layer and add the cherry on top on each of them.
Yes.
And so the cream,
I'm just trying to think about, like, if you were to take, say one of your car, commercials that you've done. So would that literally be, okay, I'm going to go do the ground material for all of the shots that I need. Then I need to do the wheels. Then I need to do for every single shot that this wheel is going to be in. Then I need to do the body. Then I need to do the windows. Is it as granular as that? Or?
Yeah, you could say, okay, let's do the car paint and let's bring it to a good state. And then if you have time, let's add visible flakes, specks in there. Let's add more detail. Let's add more some roughness, some detail somewhere. Add more detail. Just to get the overall quality even higher. If you have time to touch up the lights, okay, let's try how does it look if we use volumetric lights, if we use IES lights. If you have time for it, you won't spend all the time on one shot getting to a state and then realize that you don't have time to do it as good for the other shots.
Yes.
It's getting somewhere which is reasonable, which already looks good, and then if you have more time, get everything into a better place.
And how do you keep track of all of that? Do you have like a way of noting it down? Is it just notes? Is it?
It's a simple sheet. I mean, it's a simple Excel sheet. Sometimes that's enough. If you can share Excel sheet with people and see, okay, these are the shots, and this is usually have like, okay, you have a column for pre-production, animatic, then you have shading, lighting, rendering, then you have sign-offs or revisions, and then you have, if you want to have, okay, you have beauty touch-ups, or you can bring it into comp, then final rendering. So yeah, it's usually just an Excel sheet for me. I've tried, and sometimes some producers like to use different software. I don't know, like whatever, Jira or some other stuff, Trello or whatever. Usually it ends up being much of a hassle for me. If I'm having to coordinate a project as an art director, I would just use Google Sheets and be like, okay, this is our plan, and I use everything I use color code, so we have red, we have yellow, we have green. When everything is green at the end, I know I'm done. So yeah, it's pretty simple approach in that regard.
Because I think this kind of goes against everything that feels natural about using Octane, which is I want to get the best thing looking
Yeah.
now. And I always fall into that trap where I'll start messing with a scene in Cinema 4D and then I click fire up the renderer and let's go materials, and I haven't even thought about how are my things moving together, how are these things interacting with each other, what is the scene that I'm building, all of these things. And how do you stop that? Or do you just have to be really disciplined and say, let's just focus on one thing?
Yeah, I think if you're actually working for productions and you have deadlines, and the stuff that I usually worked on was with really strict deadlines. Until like last 2 years before all the Corona stuff, it was usually live events, so live shows, and live shows have
Sure.
fixed deadlines. You can't just say, okay, we have 2 more days because, well, it's the show, it's on that day, everything is fixed. There are like thousands of people prepared for this particular moment that the show is. It's like a press release or something for a car or whatever. So there's no way to move deadlines. So this is a very specific kind of part of 3D and design where you really have to deliver on that point. And the point is like 5 days before the release, everything has to be there and it's to be checked on the LED. So I really learned to work with fixed deadlines, and like everything has to be there. It's not like, okay, can we shift it to 2 more days, or can we have 2 more days or something? It doesn't work. And I never was in a environment where we had this fortune that we could speak with the client and like just negotiate 7 more days or something, because there was no way. It's just that's the point. It has to be there.
And that's trust on their part to you. If you want to get a repeat booking with them, you can't
absolutely,
ruin that trust from a client.
Yeah, and you have to be disciplined in this regard. What I also found out, another thing was that if you have problems, if you know, okay, we have different shots, and one of them is the really heavy one, and then the other ones are really simple to solve. For example, you have a car commercial, and there you have to animate some cars, you have to animate particles, and then you have some simple touch-ups of face retouching or adding a sky or something really simple. What I would usually do is I'll go with simple first. So
interesting.
I don't touch the heavy or the hardest shots till the end. The reason
that sounds like a recipe for disaster for me. That sounds like it has terrifying.
It has a reason. The reason being that if you start with the simple ones first, you're getting big part of the whole cake done at the beginning, and you're getting into the mood, you're getting into the flow of the project. You're working in the project and you're fixing the first stuff first because it's simple you don't have to think a lot. You just stuff that I know, okay, how it works. I do the stuff which I know how it works first because I want to get into the mood. Every project is different, so I need to get into the mood of the project. I need to really be in there and be like in the style, because I'm doing so much different stuff. Styles are sometimes very different, so I need to be in there in this style and living it. So I'm doing the simple ones first, and while I'm working on the simple ones, I can think about how could I tackle the hard ones later.
Interesting.
And
it's a way for you to process. A thought, like a different problem, ways to solve that problem as you're building simple things.
Yes, I'm kind of pre-processing the hard shots in my mind because I'm trying to get to a point where I'm already in my mind have fixed the problem, and I just can go to my workstation and just do it. And this is the way I like to actually go in my mind to go through the whole route of how to fix the problem, what I have to do, what I have to try, what I have to set up. So I can already prepare it all in my mind and then just go to the workstation and do it. And the reason is also being that if you start the project with your hardest shot, you will probably spend much more time with it than what you would do if you're towards the end. you know that those diagrams where you say, okay, I have a deadline and then 80% is nothing, and then you do everything in the last 20% or the last 2 days, because your mind is in a different mood when the deadline is approaching. It's much more vital, and it's on full throttle, and you're much more in the game, and you're like, okay, I really need to fix this now, and you're working with this completely different one. So if you start with the hardest shot the first, you're like, I have time, and then you're trying to solve it, and you're trying different stuff, and you're just trying out, let's try it this way, let's try it this way. So you're not really thinking about the problem, you're trying to solve it while you're working on it. And I realized that I'm losing too much time, because if you could lose too much time on the hard one and then be like, damn, I need to finish the simple ones, and I have no time anymore. Time is running out. while when you're doing the simple one first, you can already pre-process the hard ones in your mind, and you will be in a much different state when you actually reach those shots, and you can finish them much faster.
Yeah, you're using that deadline to almost put your mind in that, that pressure towards that hard shot. So you know that you're already pre-processing in your head the work that you need to do those things. And then you're also using the deadline against you to add pressure and give a bit of intensity to that process to get through those hard shots, or whichever ones are the difficult ones. Let's just hope there's not more than the hard shots don't outweigh the simple shots, because
that's true. Yeah, you really have to sort them, and I usually sort them by difficulty and approach them simple to hardest. And it's also that the sooner the deadline is, the faster it approaches. It also leads to actually finding solutions easier. I don't know why, but we have the saying like, don't worry, it will work. Or don't worry, at the end, everything will be fine. Which means, okay, in the end, I mean, thankfully, fortunately, we never had a problem which failed, or we never had a project which actually failed. We always found a way to reach the goal. And sometimes even the clients are like, okay, well, perhaps we thought about it and we changed the aspect of that shot so we could do it this way, and then you reach compromises, or you're much more focused, and you can much easier find a solution for those hard problems if you're already working for weeks or days in this mentality of the whole project. And with the clients, you can talk with them better. You're like, okay, we have this problem with this one shot, but we could probably tackle it this way. And since you're already working with the client for the whole time, they're like, oh yeah, I could trust you with it.
Just thinking about it from a client perspective, I think when you tell a client you're going into production, you're making the things now, they want to see stuff. Mm-hmm. That's my experience anyway. The minute you tell them, leave me alone, they're like, I want to see everything you're doing. Yeah. So almost getting through those simple things and being able to show them is not only a way to put you in the right mindset, but also somewhat ease the client to then let them trust you a little bit more. So when you do get to those hard ones, you've then built an environment around you or within the project that is accommodating, it's collaborative, it's allowing you to solve those problems. That's incredibly smart. I wouldn't have thought to do that. I would have gone hard thing first. Let's try and get that out of the way, and then we'll.
Yeah, you explained it really well. You explained it really well, because you're really getting in this. The project is all around you, and you have this mentality with you and your client. You have this relationship built up. And there's also the thing that in most projects, stuff is evolving all the time. So
exactly.
When one day the creative director will say one thing, and then towards the end, he probably completely switched his mind and wants to do something else. So if you tackle the hard ones first, you're just losing time, valuable time, which you could use to just cross off all the simple ones, because in the end, the creative director might even kick that shot. So you're like, and it can happen. I mean, if you spend 70% of your time on the hard one, and then in the end you're like, you know what? I don't think that shot will make it. You're like, what?
So you'll just be throwing your laptop at them.
Yeah, you're like, that's just not smart, because in this industry, stuff can always change. And
exactly.
I once worked 3 months on particle systems for a movie. And then when we were showing it, to the actual supervisor. Then the supervisor was like, yeah, I was talking with the director. He actually doesn't want particles.
What did you do?
I mean, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault.
No,
I was
exactly.
told, do we need particles? And I was building a lot of nice particle systems and everything. And then there was like, yeah, I talked with the director. He doesn't actually like particles. So, that's why do the simple ones, cross them off, establish a relationship with the client, and then you can much easier tackle the hard ones later on.
Yeah. And so, say, you've built these, and I'm assuming this is you're building out the final scenes as well as rendering at the same time? You're doing both at the same time? Or is it you're building out the scenes, you're doing like smaller renders, and then it's only towards the end where you do the final render for everything to be sent off for then compositing?
Yeah.
Those things.
It's usually just quarter or half the resolution with really low samples. By now, clients are understanding that what they're seeing is not the final one. They know that, okay, this resolution-wise, this is not the final resolution. This is also a bit noisy, but we can explain, okay, it's just noisy. The noise will go away. This is not really hard to understand for a client, for most clients. And so you can work with low samples, low resolutions. I sometimes like to, if I know that it has to go into the comp or to the comp artist, I blow up the low resolution to the final resolution because I want the comp artist to always work in the final resolution, no matter what I give them. Because switching resolutions, even if it's just After Effects in the comp, is just tedious. And so I just want the comp to be always in the final resolution, but the stuff that's being delivered to the comp, even if I'm the comp artist myself, it doesn't matter what it is, it can be lower. I just tell them, okay, blow it up to the final resolution and work in the final resolution, because if you have a really extensive stuff in After Effects, changing resolution can sometimes mess up a lot. If you work with shapes, with particles and whatever, lens flares or whatever. So I like to do that in final resolution, but everything before can be low, and then we just replace the renderings with a final, with a high resolution, noise-free renders at the end.
Amazing. And then you get paid and everyone's happy.
Yeah,
sounds like it's a
usually it's that way. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because it's just quite nice. I've never had a chance to actually ask around the full process of all these different things when you're working on that scale, because I think there's a different feeling when you're making stuff just for yourself and you're just learning and you're doing these things versus
you have the pressure.
You don't have that pressure, and sometimes that stops you from making the thing in the first place.
Totally.
Like having the self motivation to go off and actually create something or do something. I went on holiday with my girlfriend to Amalfi, and I took my camera and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to film everything, and I filmed literally everything. But I got back and I was like, I don't have any motivation to do. How do I even go through about sorting all of this stuff? But it turned out, I managed to put it together into like a 3-minute sort of film where it kind of condensed these 9 days into something. But even then, I was like, I opened it up and I was like, if this is just for me, this doesn't need to be there. But then I realized, no, I just like creating in the first place.
Exactly.
I just want to make something. I think me and Dino could have spoke for about 10 hours more, but unfortunately he had to go. However, do not worry, he'll be back in my next video to uncover one of the most requested topics, which is aces. A massive thank you to Dino for all the time he spent dropping an insane amount of knowledge and light onto what can be quite an extremely confusing process. And whether that's from learning about his approach to 3D software, or to why cake is important to 3D, or his approach to shot difficulty against a deadline, which has truly changed how I think I'll approach all of my future projects. If you want to see any more from him, here's how you can follow Dino and his work, including his portfolio and all the links you may need. As always, let me know if you've enjoyed this conversation. I'm going to try and do a couple more of these, and if you have any thoughts or questions on this format, or if you just really enjoyed it, drop it down in the comments below. Thanks again, and see you all very, very soon.